Right. The device we are going to take a look at in this episode is nothing short of eventually being the new king of the podcast recorder market. Oh yeah, it seems like we finally have a worthy competitor to the Rode Rodecaster Pro. Let me introduce you to the new podcast recording console from Tascam, the MIXCAST 4. But is it really the new king? The Rodecaster Pro killer, as much as I hate to use this term. Well, it certainly seems to have cherry-picked all the best features from other devices and added some cream on top. Let's have a look at what it can do and what it can do better than the devices currently on the market. Shh, even better than the Rodecaster Pro. The MIXCAST 4 is an all-inclusive podcast recorder, and by now there are a few podcast-oriented audio recorders and mixers on the market. But how can you tell what classifies as a dedicated podcast recorder? Well, in my view, the magnificent 7 features of a podcast recorder are... Magnificent 7. First, it has at least 2 mic inputs with a sufficient and clean preamp. Second, it is able to switch on phantom power for each mic input separately. Third, it has at least as many headphone ports as mic inputs. Fourth, it is able to record in multitrack, so every channel gets recorded on its separate track so that post-editing does not become a nightmare. Fifth, it needs to have built-in mix minus for recording phone calls. Sixth, it needs to have built-in USB mix minus as well for recording calls from communication apps like Zoom, MS Teams, FaceTime, etc. Seventh, it has sound pads to play effects, jingles or pre-recorded audio at the tap of a pad. So if these boxes are checked, well, you have a dedicated podcast recorder. And while there are many devices checking some or even most of these boxes, you'd be surprised to hear how few tick all of them. So it all started in 2018 with the Rodecaster Pro, and Rode did set the benchmark pretty high with this device. It wasn't perfect at launch, but by 2020, thanks to frequent firmware updates, it de facto became the device to beat. And if you'd say, it's never been tried,
it's been tried.
Do you know the 3 most successful dedicated podcasting devices on the market? Well, there are these 3. The Rodecaster Pro, the Zoom PodTrack P4, and his big brother, the Zoom PodTrack P8. And that's it. These were actually, the only ones to tick all the boxes and therefore qualify as dedicated podcast consoles, at least in the Podcast Meister channel's book of references. Well, now they've got company. Enter the second half of 2021, and to everyone's surprise, Tascam has dropped a bomb on the podcast mixer market with the Tascam MIXCAST 4. So while it is first and foremost a full-fledged podcast recording console, as even stated on the box, it is actually much more than that. It is pretty much everything I wish the Rodecaster Pro was, and which it isn't. There are quite some really clever design details that I think you should see for yourself. Actually, there are 13 of them. We'll get to that in a minute. Full disclosure, I have reached out to Tascam Europe for a loaner device, and they were kind enough to send one to me for the purpose of this review. I'm going to send it back to Tascam and no money exchange hands whatsoever, so what you'll hear is my experiences and my undistorted opinion about this device. First of all, it checks all the boxes you'd expect from a podcasting console in 2021. The Tascam MIXCAST 4, as its name suggests, has 4 mic inputs, each of them with 66.5 decibel gain, and this is enough to power any microphone, so you won't need a cloud lifter or fathead for that extra clean gain. It has that right out of the box. It is also able to record 3 remote guests with built-in mix minus, 1 over USB, 1 over a wired TRRS phone connection, and 1 over Bluetooth. Of course, you can use either of these channels to play or record anything else coming from these devices connected through those channels. It can record 48 kHz 24-bit wave files, looking at you, Zoom, so video podcasters can feel safe about syncing longer audio. It has long faders, and it is a nice touch that the unity level is actually marked on the scale of the faders. Even better, if you are unfamiliar with gain staging, just pull up each channel's level to somewhat equal level and select from the audio settings a feature called Auto Mixer. And then the MIXCAST 4 will take care of the right levels for you. So if you are just starting with podcasting, there are so many things anyway that you need to pay attention to. So everything that automates something for you is godsend. As soon as you'll have experience and wisdom behind your months and years of podcasting, you'll appreciate the ability to set everything up on a granular level and dig into all the settings, which you can also happily do on the MIXCAST 4. But for beginners who are less equipped with audio knowledge, it's just great. And even if it will not be as perfect as if an audio engineer would set it up for your particular equipment, it minimizes the chances of failure. You can also switch on phantom power for each channel, and it also will be indicated on that channel with a little red dot on the screen, where it is switched on. Thank you very much indeed. You have 4 headphone ports, matching the colors of the mic inputs, so every present podcast participant can get their own pair of headphones. What's really nice about them, that not only are these headphone dials color-coded to match the mic channels, but these colors are also lit, so you can easily see and also differentiate them even in a darker environment. Clever. You can record all tracks plus the stereo mix separately to an SD card, which you can export right from the device, either in mass storage mode or using the Tascam Podcast Editor software. More about that later. You have 8 sound pads at your fingertips, but you can actually have 8 banks of them, so all in all 64 sound pads to play with, to which you can drop any audio you'd like. You can even quickly edit them right where you assign them. And you can use them to beep out trash talk or apply an effect to one of the mic channels.
Should you want to mask a participant's voice, or
Make it sound like a helium-smoking chipmunk.
or Darth Vader for that matter.
Mic inputs with auto mix, headphone ports that are lining up with colors, individually switchable phantom power, built-in mix minus for phones but also for a USB connected device and for a Bluetooth connection, multi-track recording, sound pads. It clearly qualifies as a dedicated podcast recording and mixing console. But it does not stop there. You can do so much more with this console. It has the large 5-inch color touchscreen where you can adjust different settings in a really intuitive way and manage the device. It also has 2 line outputs for monitor speakers. We'll get back to that in a second. Within the input settings, you can add different real-time effects to your audio signals, and you can go into the granular settings of these effects if you like to do so. Every single one of them. So let's see what we have here. Tone, which is actually a low shelf, high shelf, as you can see from the menus. By the way, if you get this tools icon, it means that you can go into the nitty-gritty settings. So it's a high shelf and a low shelf to which you can set the frequency and the gain. You have a compressor which you can set to soft or hard, or you can set it up on a granular level again. This is all you could wish for. In a compressor, I mean. Then you have a de-esser. Also you can set it up as per threshold and frequency. A noise suppressor, which is a low-cut filter and noise gate. Although I have to say that with the noise gate you have to be really careful. There's a bit of experimenting needed. And you have ducking, which prioritizes microphone 1 over all the other microphones, so everything else will be lowered when mic 1 speaks. What's really nice is that you could also have certain voice processing abilities for the non-microphone channels. Like you can add some de-essing and noise suppression, as well as some audio enhancements for the particular use case, using Tascam's around 50 years of experience in the audio recording field. So let's just quickly recap the 13 features that are unique to the MIXCAST 4 and which added the competitive edge and also prove how much thought actually went into the design process. First, the colored lights on the headphone dials. Really clever design. Second, the indication of a switched on phantom power for channels with a little red dot on the screen. Nice. Third, you can actually put markers to the recordings right from the console using a hardware button, which is very handy. Fourth, beside the usual mute and solo buttons, you also have a talkback button. If you push this and keep it pushed, you can talk to your present participants and it will not make it into the recording. Kind of like a producer button. As of now, only those will hear this who are in the room with you, so it works for mic channels 1 to 4, but not for remote guests. Fifth, and now we are getting into really nice additions, the mic inputs on this device are no simple XLR inputs, but combo jacks, which means that they can also take a 1/4 inch or 6.3mm TRS cable. And if you'd ask if they can handle line level signals, well, kinda sorta. I actually have tried it with a keyboard and it is not ideal, at least not on the mic input channels, but no worries, this gets solved as well. Where it is ideal, however, if you are running your mic signal through an external preamp or a compressor that puts out line level signals like the DBX286S for instance, you can actually plug the output of them directly into a mic channel here. You can't do that so simply with the other three. I will explain how you can still do it with the other devices in one of the next videos on this channel, which reminds me to hit the like and the subscribe if this video is of value to you. So when plugging in a line signal, just pay attention to turn the channel's gain all the way down because you don't need it. And if you do add extra gain, it will result in a horribly distorted sound, obviously. I tried, you don't have to. Sixth, the real big thing is that in addition to these combo jacks, you also get dedicated line level inputs. Now, this is first of all amazing. Second, it's also very unique. What this means is that while it is a full-blown podcast recording console, it also may just serve you very well as the center of your home studio as an audio interface. Now you can plug in instruments, like a keyboard, into these inputs. None of the other dedicated podcast recorders can do this. Now, you do need to select whether you'd use the line inputs or the TRRS phone input, but I think it would be pretty much an edge case when you would need both. You still have the Bluetooth channel, by the way, to record a phone interview while using a keyboard if need be. Seventh, apart from the standard 1/4 inch line outputs, you also have an 1/8 inch line output as well, to use with cameras or a video switcher like the ATEM Mini series, which is nice. Eighth, sound pad names on the screen. Why didn't anyone do this before? So simple, and what a difference it makes. I don't know about you, but I can get all confused with the 4 little buttons on the PodTrack P4 and can never remember which sound effect I put where. I know you have the cutouts for the Rodecaster Pro, but this solution on the MixCast 4 is just way more elegant and frankly ingenious. You can actually see them in color and in position, so you can very quickly find what you want to play in. And by the way, you can change the color right on the device, and the color changes both on the pads and in the indicators as well. It's not all roses though, but let's stay with the positives for now. Ninth, within the audio settings you have a USB delay. This is potentially a game changer for streamers. As audio is normally quicker than the video signal, so far you needed to offset your audio either in OBS or wherever you were live streaming from, or on the video switcher. You can actually set it off by up to 2000 milliseconds, so 2 seconds, and just to put that into perspective, on the ATEM Mini you can have a maximum 8 frames offset. So if you were shooting 30 frames per second, you can quickly calculate how many milliseconds this means. You can, but you don't need to. It's 320 milliseconds, not 2000, 320. So you have a bit more leeway here. 10th, you have an 8-inch port on the front of the device, where you can plug in headphones and then it takes over headphone port number 1. This is quite nice, but nothing really special, right? What is special about it, that it is actually a TRRS port, which means that you can actually plug in a speaker headset you might have for your phone and use it as a microphone to record with. You can actually select on channel 1 if you want your audio signal to come in from the rear, so this port, or from the front, which is this port. And then it will sound like this. So if you've just spent 599 euros on this device and don't want to spend another 100, 200, 400, 4000 on a microphone just yet, you can get started with your familiar speaker headphones or conference call headphones you may have from work. Of course, it will not be comparable to a Pro XLR microphone, but you do have the voice processing possibility for these, so you can actually tweak it to sound acceptable. 11th, feedback prevention. This is really something that is again unique. which might mean a quality of life improvement for those hating to wear headphones on a conference call. What this does it allows you to listen to the call via your monitor speakers while using the Tascam MIXCAST 4 as your audio interface with a Pro microphone plugged into it. Normally, you can't do this, as the sound coming out from your monitor speakers will bleed into your microphone from the side and from the back, and it would create an endless feedback loop resulting in a horrible beep sooner or later, even if you are using dynamic microphones with really good background noise rejection. This does not have a very good background noise rejection, by the way. This feature, however, will check any sound trying to bleed into your microphone and do everything to eliminate those. Hooray! 12th, Auto Mixer. We talked about it already. The MIXCAST 4 takes care of the levels for you and minimizes the chances of failure. And finally, 13th, the Tascam Podcast Editor. Yes, Tascam actually launched a free, practically full-function digital audio workstation. Now you can download it for free and you can use it with just about any audio interface, but make no mistake, it gets really amazing when the MIXCAST 4 is connected to it. Watch this. I don't want to make a full tour of it, but certain things I need to mention. You can move over whatever you have recorded on the SD card with a click of a button called Read from MIXCAST. By the way, if you have the MIXCAST 4 plugged into your computer, it is automatically detected and no pairing process is needed. It will then put every recorded channel onto its color-coded, preloaded, separate audio track and you can start editing. It does have all the basic features like split, combine, copy, paste, insert, delete. It also has a button called Remove. If you were using GarageBand, for instance, this is something you actually needed to set up a custom keyboard combination for. What it does is that when you cut a certain piece of audio out of the recording, it doesn't leave a hole there, but it actually pulls the remaining of the recording back to where you made the cut to make it a continuous recording. Truly appreciated. On the tracks themselves, you can fade in, fade out in a clever, easy way. Also, you can click the magic wand at the top right part, which would apply some standard quality boost to your audio at the touch of a button, like noise gate, like compression, and normalizes the loudness. Think of it as a baby Hindenburg journalist, only it's free, and that one costs €300 one-off for the multi-track version. Clearly, this sets this mixer apart from its competition. You see, I've praised the Rode Connect software, which is also a free app and can do fantastic things, but it only works with currently 2 Rode microphones, none of which is an extra arm mic. It does look great and it works very well for what it was designed for, but you can't edit your podcasts on it. And, most notably, it has nothing to do with the Rodecaster Pro. Sure, it wouldn't be fair to compare these two software, but in this context especially, the Tascam MIXCAST 4 has the edge. It is really a plug-and-play complete package that you can start and finish your podcast with right away. And I think it was much more wise to have it as a separate software that works on PC, Mac, iOS and Android as well, than to add it on the device itself like it was the case on the Zoom PodTrack P8. It also can do a lot more than that. For instance, you can make it read all your existing plugins on your computer. Also, it comes with a feature which I was really happy on Rode Connect as well, namely that it can export recordings at a defined loudness level. What a great thing to have, especially for beginners who struggle to get a consistent loudness every time across episodes, or videos for that matter. Great! So it can pretty much do everything the best podcast recorder console should, and adds the 13 extremely useful extras that you don't have anywhere else. In my view, it is plain and simple fantastic. I do have some improvement proposals to Tascam though, and I have actually sent it to Tascam as well, so here comes the short list of areas to improve. Notifications. I understand why the device would ask you at every switch on if you want to leave the phantom power on for a channel that you have switched on previously. But it also can get annoying after you have a constant setup and you just want to go ahead and create. It also kind of defeats the purpose of the cute little red dot indicating phantom power for a channel, because I rarely need to be informed about it during the recording, but it's nice to see and it really pops from the screen when you're starting up. But then why notify? I do suggest to give us the ability to turn this notification off. While it is in many ways the best implementation of sound pads I've ever seen, But it is also really shocking that you can't actually change the sound pad banks while you are recording. The little arrows disappeared. You can't change it. You have to stick with the one you've set. This way, I actually need to select the right bank for an episode up front, and even though I have 8 banks at my disposal, each with 8 sound pads, I actually can only use one as soon as I press record. Please change it. Talkback really should work to remote guests as well. On the podcast editor, it is really hard to get used to not having a pinch to zoom for zooming in and out on the tracks, as well as horizontal scrolling. Please add that. It's just counterintuitive not to have them, as well as the deleting with the backspace button. That's just how I would use it. Also, the file management can get a little confusing, not necessarily on a PC or a Mac where you actually can drag and drop, but on the mobile operating systems. So it's not necessarily bad, just needs a little bit more explanation. Magic Wand should be a switch on switch off feature like on the photos, like on iOS photos. Not something irreversible after saving. As it is automatic, it might be wrong, in which case I do not want to stuck with a useless recording. Scaling would be nice to have not only on the faders, but also on the screen. Of course, all of these can be fixed through firmware/software updates, so I'm not really concerned about them. Actually, the real urgent one to update would be the sound pad banks. That's a big must-have. Last, USB power. I really like that you can lock in your power plug. And I also understand that you don't have a battery option, but a USB power option would actually be really nice. And as for my overall opinion, this is certainly the most versatile podcast recorder on the market right now. It is still quite big of a device, about as big as the Rodecaster Pro, and is also rather heavy. I could easily be okay with smaller and shorter faders in exchange for a smaller size. In the next iteration maybe. For which I, even though have a wishlist, the Tascam MIXCAST 4 already outclasses its competition with its 13 unique features. At the same time, it does deliver on what we can say is a standard requirement for a top-notch podcast recorder console. It can satisfy the needs of beginners just as well as those of more advanced creators, even those who have some musical ambitions, thanks to the line level inputs. A clear recommendation from my side.